Welcome to the Geography of Crime, a podcast by Cap Index hosted by Dr. Grant Drawvey, Vice President of Geospatial Crime Solutions. Crime doesn't happen in a vacuum. Place matters, and in each episode of this podcast, we'll explore how geography shapes crime risk across industries. With expert insights from criminologists, security professionals, and business leaders, we'll break down crime trends, analyze real-world data, and explore what drives risk in different places. Now, let's dive into today's episode.
Welcome, everyone, back to Geography of Crime podcast. I'm your host, Grant Drawvey, and today I have the pleasure of speaking with one of my good friends, Dr. Alejandro Giménez-Santana at the Rutgers University School of Criminal Justice. Alex, you want to introduce yourself to everyone?
Yes. It's great to be here. Great to be with you, Grant. My name is Alex Santana. I'm a faculty at the Rutgers Newark School of Criminal Justice. Been a faculty member since 2019. And some of the work I will talk probably today about is on the Newark Public Safety Collaborative and some of the work we've done both on the geography of crime as well as on collaborative co-produced responses for public safety that go a little bit outside of the traditional law enforcement responses. So happy to talk about some of this work today with you.
Oh, fantastic. I mean, you and I have gone back almost a decade. I was thinking about that before hopping on here, my days at Rutgers. But really, I mean, that's where you and I did start to get to know each other. What got you interested in the criminal justice realm from the get-go?
So it was very indirect and wasn't really seeking this path in my career. It really happened through my mentor and the chair, my thesis, Les Kennedy, who happened to be both faculty in my department in global affairs as well as in criminal justice. And little by little, he kind of dragged me to the dark side of criminal justice. And my thesis, my whole PhD turned into really a criminal justice PhD because all I was really doing was studying crime data and really working on that space. So it was not something that I was seeking, but just as an anecdote, my dad is a retired police officer, and it wasn't new to me. But when I found myself really thrown into the criminal justice as a field, I kind of felt that all the pieces were coming together because I grew up with somebody working on law enforcement. My entire and again and just to add to it, as you know, I'm not from here. I'm not from the U.S. I grew up in Spain. So for me, it was all at once, all new as I was, going through my graduate years, both becoming accustomed to being in New Jersey, living in Newark. Now it's been over 15 years, but really opening the door to something that I wasn't necessarily, seeking, but that I got extremely interested, and it became my passion, and it became, the work that I've been doing now for over a decade.
And that's always great to hear. So I think along a lot of our career paths, we have those mentors that kind of tug us in different directions. And unknowingly, for me, it was environmental crim back during my master's, but it goes a long way of wouldn't be here without that little slide of tug. And you hit on it a little there. You're also the executive director of Rather Large Project there in Newark. You want to give us a brief background on just the significance of the project? It is huge for what it is. And then where it's at today?
Yes, absolutely. So the Newark Public Safety Collaborative, in short, NPSC, really was started in 2018, 2019. And I will really give credit to our former chancellor at Rutgers Newark and the way she understood the anchor mission of the university. The goal was really to find pathways between academic research and the practitioner in the field, just to be able to find ways to help community organizations to be better equipped to make data-informed decisions in the Newark community. And that really was the beginning of NPSC, was why don't we bring them together? We became a neutral convener and started bringing different types of stakeholders, not just community-based organizations, which are kind of the core of the group that we work with, but also law enforcement, local government, businesses, philanthropy. And it was really that collaborative effort that grew over time from a group of 15 stakeholders in 2019 to over 45 stakeholders nowadays. It's been fantastic. I would say two things that really connect to this podcast is, first, the importance in the use of data. the importance of places and how they can help people make that informed decisions that can really support the activities they do on the ground. But even most importantly, I think, is this notion of co-production, which is something that I think it's key to this work, is that we need to move from more the models that existed back since the 70s of community policing, where that not necessarily are models, they are mostly a feel-good philosophy where the police interact with the community, and move toward what I believe NPSC has done very well, which is true bodies of action, where those community groups are on their own, addressing on their own lane some of the gaps that the police are not well equipped to deal with. We're talking about mental health problems, we're talking about homelessness, we're talking about youth programs. These are things that the police are both not equipped, they don't have the time to deal with, but the community can be very strategic and very effective at dealing with these problems. So the collaborative really brought them all under the same floor. And instead of just having conversations that were unidirectional, where the police control both the data and the message, that turned really into a body of action where everyone has a lane that they are better equipped to deal with certain problems. And collaboratively, through the use of data and place-based analysis, they are able to really make that informed decisions that can help them address some of the most pressing issues and improving the end of the work, the way they are working, which tended to be not collaborative to start with, and now is becoming more coordinated and more collaborative through the years. And just to give you a number, in Newark, and I know right now this year it's a particular year because we're seeing decreases in crime across the country, but we are seeing right now we are in just 20 homicides this year, down from 120 in just 10 years ago. So we are at close to a 70% reduction this year. Violent crime is down to levels never seen before. And so I really think that the work and there's a lot of good researchers out there talking about this, is the effect of really these community responses in complementing police work, I think has had a strong and very significant impact in crime reduction efforts across the country. I know it wasn't short, but it's summary of 6 years of work.
But I think you hit a lot of key points there. And one that I kind of want to pick your brain on there is when this started, you probably had, and you kind of alluded to it, the siloing of different departments, organizations, groups themselves, because they are used to tackling an issue by themselves versus the collaborative itself, to where, yes, everyone has their lane, but you're subject matter experts who is better equipped, has the resources, has the training. It's not always police. How did that grow over the 6 years? Because you said you started with 15, got to 45. At the start, was it a bit rougher in terms of that collaborative nature? And did it take some of that gaining of trust? Because that goes a long way. The more meetings you had, the more FaceTime you had, it does go a long way in some of these working groups.
Yeah, and there you're spot on. One of the main issues is, first, these groups are not incentivized to collaborate. And that I will blame for that the funding structure, the way they get grants, for example. They're competing for the same pool of money, so there's no incentives really to collaborate. It is really when they understand that by collaborating, they can all improve and they can grow in their own ways without necessarily competing against one another, that you can get further if you work together kind of mentality. It really got them to first start using the data to apply for grants and justify that there was a need for more resources because the data supported that there were problems that needed to be addressed. And second, it was the trust between the partners and how they were there for the good reasons. So there was no political agenda, for example. There was no one stakeholder trying to impose over others. The university, in this case, Rutgers, became that neutral convener, and we kind of floated in between the other large interest groups, which are, as well-known, law enforcement, the community, etc. We were not imposing to anyone any type of political agenda, or we were not part of any interest group. That helped to increase, I would say, improve our position, but also, as you mentioned, and just to finish, these relationships take time to be built. It's all about long-term, maintaining long-term relationships, making these groups understand that we were there for the good reasons. We were not researchers that were coming to extract from the community, publish, and move on, but that we were on this on the long run. that really helped to solidify our position. And now, 6 years later, you can tell that there's no longer any doubt that, we are not there for, just for our individualistic, or opportunistic reasons, but that this is a model, this is an initiative that is here to stay and that will continue regardless of whether I'm there or others come, because it is playing a purpose that is both needed in the public safety arena, but it's also understood as necessary to maintain the public safety ecosystem of a city like Newark functioning and being informed as part of the efforts that they are undergoing in the city.
Well, and that's very nice. And I think you hit a point there that gets overlooked so much, the sustainability of some of these efforts, especially if they're grant funded. Of course, we all hope to aspire to have that go on, but it's nice to hear you say, if you were to leave, the infrastructure is there to be sustainable and continue on post Alex kind of scenario. But it's great to hear, because it is a tough part to grow into, but it's, I think, a prime example of that. Now, given you're working with all these different organizations, be it city agencies, and kind of overlapping with what we've discussed outside of this podcast, can you talk about some of your work in CPTED, crime prevention through environmental design, what you've seen work in Newark, what you're looking at, approaches related to that can help cities?
Yes, absolutely. And I'm very much someone that supports CPTED as a strategy that both works and can be effective in dealing with some of these problems in the long term. And I always compare CPTED, the effect of the CPTED strategy versus, for example, allocating more police patrols to a location, which we know can have a short-term impact, but not necessarily a long-term impact. In terms of CPTED applications in Newark, one of our strongest cases was the improvement of lighting, particularly working on a collaborative. It was a public-private partnership with the utilities company to replace 2,500 street lights that were operating HPS lighting, or hyper pressure sodium lights, the yellowish kind of lights, for LEDs. And what we found through an evaluation that took a few years, so we evaluated over 4 years of data pre-post these lights were installed, is that enhanced LED lights had a short-term, strong and statistically significant impact in reducing nighttime violent crime, and that impact was closer to 35 to 40% in reduction of nighttime violent crime. So it was not just statistically significant, but also strong reduction in crime in those areas. And for this, of course, we use controls, because as we know, crime has been going down in Newark. So to make sure that this was not just part of the ongoing reduction in crime that we're seeing across the city, we actually had controls on those lights that were not replaced to see whether there were differences. And we did find strong differences between our treatment and control. This study actually is received an R&R from the Journal of Quantitative Criminology just recently, and we hope it's going to be out so that everyone can actually get to see more, more details about this research study. And another CPTED that I think was pretty impactful, also talking about lighting, was corner stores and the connection between corner stores and incidents of gun violence. We found that a subset of 10 corner stores were concentrating a disproportionate number of incidents of gun violence. And one of the strategies, again, one of others, had to do with utilities company installing floodlights in front of the corner stores to deter certain behaviors that were taking place in front of those corner stores, like drug selling or drug consumption and other illegal behaviors that were contributing or could be contributing to these incidents. And here we also saw a positive impact. Now, that was not the only strategy that was implemented near corner stores. There was a needs assessment, community needs assessment that was done with the business owners. There was even a program to bring in fresh produce. So there were a lot of efforts that were done to deal with the problem with corner stores, but that's a different conversation. I think, again, CPTED can be very useful in providing those more long-term sustainable solution to some of the problems that we are seeing. And of course, all the things that we want to try, and there's been interest in our partners, are things like cleanups, which have taken place in some in some pilots, as well. So community cleanups, there's a project ongoing right now where they're going to install trash cans, which were not there, and the Department of Public Works is going to come and pick up that trash now weekly. And the community, what they're doing is every other week they're completely cleaning that street to see and compare and contrast what is the impact of maintaining that street clean while also providing now access to to trash cans so that the trash can be disposed, to see whether there's going to be a change in behavior with those changes in the environment. Many other examples, but at the end of this chat, I will give you the website so people can come and see the blog on other examples of SafeData applications.
No, that's stellar. And that's why I like hearing about the lighting sites. I think that's a nice growing literature that we have across some of the larger cities now. It's a trackable one of who is getting LED lights and the impact it does have on crime itself. So I love hearing that. The other SEPTED ones, I think, are stellar. And I think we're at an interesting phase within some of this place-based crime work, too, is the evaluative component. Of a lot of it's gone to just sheer counts. It's great to hear and good luck on the R&R, but you also have control groups and trying to evaluate what is the true impact. So you can give a tip of the cat of like, was this successful as an output, an outcome event that you're trying to associate with that. So that's stellar. Now, on the flip side, given all the work you've done in the last 6 years with cities, what do you see cities, and you've traveled around, Newark's not the only project that you've been part of, you've spoken all over, you've worked with many, many cities. What do you think cities often get wrong when trying to reduce crime?
Quite, that's a tough one because I can think of many things that can go wrong. I will say in the end, there's just not a one size fits all approach to start with. So the beginning is, I would say one of the strongest assets that I found in Newark that I think can be a good example is the collaboration between different agencies. So we know law enforcement cannot do it all alone. To put too much emphasis on law enforcement responses is probably never going to get you as far as you want to get, because again, law enforcement cannot deal with all the problems that they face, and they need collaboration from the community. You also need community organizations that want to play ball, and they also want to work with law enforcement. Sometimes there's pushback, and there's community organizations that are not open to work with law enforcement, and I think that's something that also needs to be worked out. Those relationships need to be worked out so that there's more collaboration. And third, and here's kind of talking about the three interest groups, is the local government piece. In Newark, really, we saw the mayor being a force behind the use of data to make strategic decisions on how to allocate resources and improve programs that were underway. You need also a local government that is supportive of bringing in innovation, for example, to this work, bringing in new ideas, bringing in tables of collaboration that can bring partners to discuss some of these problems and really use and again, here I'm going to talk about, I'm going to bring in some of the terminology that has been used in the field for a long time, but maybe we also need to shift it, is the crime-oriented policing approach. We need to think about these problems as things that where you can bring others to start spearheading ideas on how to deal with these problems through collaboration, through a problem-solving effort. But that requires, again, opening the door to collaboration, opening the door to the use of data, which I think is key to this work, so that these efforts are focused and they are intentional. Something, for example, that I've seen work in Newark extremely well is when you bring the attention of community partners to that street intersection, what that is disproportionately affected by crime A, B, or C, and you get them to really focus their efforts for a few months on just implementing programming in that specific street. That's when we've seen the most momentum. The problem sometimes is everything feels like you are powerless. There's nothing you can do, and it's because you're trying to cover too much land when really, as we know, these crime incidents are extremely concentrated in specific locations, and that by addressing those very specific micro-level locations, those hyper-local environments, you can really have a stronger impact. But again, all this only works within this context of collaboration and coordination of responses. If you launch one group to just deal with the problem, you're likely going to fail, because that one group might be good at one thing, but may not be good at dealing with all the issues that they're going to confront in there.
No, truly that, and this kind of leads into what when Eric Pisa was on here talking about like the relationship between researchers, academics, and agencies, organizations. But given you're almost an embedded researcher, like we hear about embedded crime analysts and that, but you're in a very different position. And when you think through that, what's your take on what role should academics play in some of this place-based crime prevention work? Since when I was in that seat, like we're an outsider coming in, versus like you are truly sitting around the table with a lot of them. What role do you see that going into the future for this academic type?
Yes, so we like to call ourselves, and I'm including you, as pro-academics, and it's this idea of those academics that are intentionally practitioners because they do want to see those research tools, those evidence-based resources being applied for the betterment of society. For in other words, to see the applied criminology taking place. Because for us, that's the most important thing. Why do I think it's important for academics to open the door to this? I understand in the end that we are researchers, we are limited on how much we can do because of the incentives of publishing versus collaborating, the incentives of promotion, and for that I need to publish in these top tier journals versus spending time in building relationships with community partners. So in the end, the current structures don't make it easy, and I'm just going to be honest. But I think in the end, if you're able to establish those relationships, work and still publish, but make sure that there is a win-win situation between you as a researcher and the communities that you're working with by providing them access not just to research products, but also being there to listen to them, being there to learn from them, because we may know part of the story. We may have a lot of tools that can be useful for communities to use, but we don't have all the answers. They have access to a wealth of information, of lived experiences that can contribute to our research like we can contribute to the work they do. So I strongly believe that we need to really meet them in the mid, to try to meet each other right at that spot where we are winning from that relationship the same way that they are winning from that relationship, and stay away as much as possible from the type of settings that others have used in the past, where it was all about extracting, publishing, and moving on to the next community. That really made it, I would say to myself, made it hard at the beginning to get buy-in from the community. I had a lot of pushback on my first year where they said, here comes another researcher to study us and move on. It really took me about a year, not just to me, but my team, to really get that buy-in. And now we are in a different place. Now we are sitting, like you said, at the table. It wasn't easy. And I think there's more that needs to be done to understand these dynamics. And again, meet them in the middle. Don't expect that, they're going to give you everything. If there's no value proposition on your end, that also provides them value on that relationship. There needs to be a win-win in these relationships.
Truly, and I've thought about this, and I've talked about it with others. If you look at who we've cited over the decades, it's not shocking you associate people's names and researchers and academics with a specific city, because they've taken the time, they've gained the trust, they've made all the connections, they are truly committed to that. And it's in a different almost position now with how many cities just have an online data portal. So life becomes a bit easier just to grab data over here, analyze it, and push it out for that without knowing some of the intricacies of the data. Where it does take the meetings, building that trust. And it's just not the publication, it's just not the grant money. It is truly trying to make a change in that neighborhood, or that community, or the city as a whole. So it is a nice change to that. Now with that, given your work, and this is not Newark specifically, but say you had the ability to redesign, change a city to improve safety, what's the big ticket item that you would want to use, be it SEPTED or anything else, to help alleviate crime in cities? Because it's outside of Newark, plenty of cities still have high crime. How would you want to design out or change crime within a city? What would you recommend?
So I will take it actually on a different angle than I usually address, because sometimes, and I'm going to give you two angles. when we walk into certain spaces, myself and my team, we walk in certain spaces, we always are confronted to a reality of the context that exists in those neighborhoods. They will share with us that there's just unemployment, there's poverty, there are conditions that enable those behaviors because they live in those disadvantaged spaces where they're not given the opportunities that others have in other spaces. And it's the context, that socioeconomic context, that is so strongly connected to some of the problems. We always kind of twist that conversation and say, yes, we know that, but we also feel like we should not be disempowered to do work just because of those contexts, and still find ways to help reduce some of these problems by doing the work that MPSC has been doing in the neighborhoods. Now, if I could change something, I would love to offer, especially youth, because youth has been connected to a lot of the problems that we've seen, providing them with opportunities, having an unlimited budget and being able to provide them with opportunities that they're just not able to have usually. And I'll give you an example that was very cool to me is we're talking about auto thefts. Auto thefts skyrocketed in Newark with the whole Kia and Hyundai challenge. The increases of 2,000 auto thefts in 1 year. It was insane. When we spoke with youth, we had a conversation with so-called at-risk youth as part of a program we partnered with Opportunity Youth Network and the Obama Foundation. And when we spoke with them, they said to us, well, I don't have a chance to drive a car. I'm not going to have a chance to drive a car. And I see others in my street that, have these fancy cars. And they basically are making the case. They feel that they don't have, that they feel like, why can't they have what others have? So if I can have it, I'm going to take it. Again, I'm not justifying the action, but I'm just saying if I could have anything I want, I would love to create opportunities where individuals living in these neighborhoods where they have grown up, feeling a lot of times the effects of this investment after decades of this investment, lack of opportunities, and other many problems that we cannot fix quickly enough. What if we could bring opportunities to those spaces so that they will make other choices? What if we could bring opportunities to those spaces so that I could answer that question and say, why don't you have access to a car, you and your friends? And you don't need to anymore commit a crime in order to have that first experience. So again, maybe thinking out really in an ideal world where resources are unlimited, but it really sometimes makes me wonder, we all come from different backgrounds. You need to come to understand where they come from. And in the end, yes, make the case that is wrong and that is a crime. But at the same time, I wish there was a way for us to get them the type of opportunities that we have, that we all have in different contexts have the opportunity to have. So that would be my if I had to get something, a magical one, I'll try to bring in opportunities where they are lacking and where they deserve more investments.
Oh, of course. And I think that's such a pivotal age. I mean, research continues to point to that early childhood and into teenage years as more influential, especially from the life course trajectory. So altering the different opportunities, we know it's important. So it's, yes, unlimited resources, but even with a budget, you can start to alleviate in different avenues. So that's always good to hear. And when you were talking through walking through some of these communities, and that it reminded me, and it actually kind of leads into where I want to go to next, is when you and I were in Argentina, walking through some of the neighborhoods there. And we have police in front of us, behind us is the captain chief. We're walking with and just hearing the story of the people there and the crime levels and everything with that. Given your background, and your work's not just limited to the U.S., we've gone to other countries, you've gone to plenty of other ones to speak on your work. How do you see it in other countries in terms of crime prevention, working towards, I know the U.S. and especially Europe and the UK are used as kind of a model for it. What do you see? Do you have any insights that you've gained from other countries that you kind of bring back with you along the way?
As insights that can be exported outside of the U.S.? Yeah.
Or either way, that they can take and use in other countries. I'll leave it that open-ended to you.
Yeah, it's a great question, but it also is also very complex. It's very complex because the way the U.S. is structured makes it unique. For example, in the U.S., a lot of the services that we see in cities is externalized through grants and through organizations that basically fill the gap that the government is not willing to fill. Versus in Europe, for example, government has a stronger presence in providing a lot of those services. So it becomes a little harder, for example, in Europe to create true bodies of collaboration between nonprofits providing certain services because government covers a lot of that space. So it becomes more about collaborating with different departments within government rather than actual organizations, which I think can limit a little bit this type of work. A good example, though, that where I see opportunities is I went to one of the, before USAID was defunded, they were actually funding a lot of work in Central America to develop structures that could bring these type of evidence-based, research tools to help communities to improve public safety in countries where right now mano dura, in other words, put everyone in jail for minor offenses, which as we know is what happened in the US back in the 90s, is what is being done right now. So how to change those narratives and explain that not by detaining everyone that is near the broken window, you are going to get the outcome that you want because you're just going to perpetuate those cycles of violence as they come into prison and come out. How do you instead look for more sustainable solutions? And in Latin America, I saw an opportunity for really some of this work to take place. As you know, through the work that we've done in Latin America is both, it brings two realities together. It's both the area of the world with the highest levels of crime and also one of the area of the world with the highest levels of inequality, and where the differences between rich and poor are the more stark. There, I see a lot of opportunity in the end to kind of reduce those tensions that have given, that, and again, we're connecting to strength theory and with a lot of these theories that explain in the end what is giving energy to this or is enabling these increases in crime, which I think are very much connected to the socioeconomic reality of these spaces, where again, there's wealth is concentrated heavily in a very few. And just a lot of individuals are looking for ways to improve their socioeconomic status and how they do. They see others committing crimes, so they commit crimes. Mm-hmm. How do you change those narratives? How do you improve safety in those environments? I think a lot of work, a lot of effort needs to be directed into that space in Latin America, where there's a lot of still needs to be done, and that is going to require strong changes in the way government interacts with this process. Is going to need to change narratives of how mano dura or again locking people up is sustainable, and it's going to require a lot of effort from researchers that can go to that space and bring in some of the lessons that we've learned here in the U.S. that work and apply them to those environments. So I see a lot of opportunity in Latin America. I think. In Europe, which is the other continent that I know well, they just are not being affected by the same levels of crime that we see here in the US. So I would say in terms of a need, it's not as urgent as what is happening in Central America and generally Latin America.
Oh, and that's great. And for listeners, we'll post Alex's CV and even Google Scholar. And like when you got into like the stratification, it reminded me of the Columbia work and like the richness of that data to see how starkly different economic stratification was in Colombia and how geographically isolated some areas are. It was fascinating to see some of that. So I think it truly makes sense, and you can start to visualize this, and that's obviously kind of the notion of the podcast, but like visually seeing it on the map and making sense of some of that, it's very illuminating to just how different, coming back to you from prior one, opportunities are. And access to resources and everything like that. So thank you for that part up. Last question. What grinds your gears when it comes to criminal justice, crime work, your work? What do you wish just people generally understood better?
The best for last. So we are both passionate in regards to mapping and the power of data to inform conversations and basically how much you can communicate with these tools. I would say for me, GIS was transformative in my career. It's something that I've been interested. It's something that I'm passionate about because I just find that there's so much that we can do improving communication, because in the end, it's a GIS, a map. What it allows you to understand, make connections. It helps you to communicate better, but it also helps you to tell stories. And I think that something that I've always been passionate, I will connect this with our current dean, Nancy Levine, is that connection between numbers and narratives, is how you can tell stories. And how stories is what in the end people remember. So when you are trying to fix a problem, we are all problem solvers in our own ways, using tools like a map in order to get people to problem solve is something that I've been passionate since the day I took my first GIS class. And I think it's something that has kept me very much connected to this work and has kept me extremely engaged in continuing to develop this aspect of translational research that I find so interesting. Now, because not everything is about work, I'm also going to talk about the other side. I'm a beach person. I cannot get away from the water enough. I was just back from Spain. And if I could change something, I would just love to live by the beach in California. Don't tell that anyone in New Jersey. I love New Jersey, but I feel like as someone that grew up by the sea, by the Mediterranean, it is hard to separate the sea from someone who's so connected to it. So when I think about the summer, I wish we had access to a better beach. And I know you're in Arkansas; you're not as close to it. But yes, that is something that keeps me up. If I could, when I'm near the beach every morning, I will go and surf or do stand-up paddle or do something by the water. It's something that really gives me energy, and we need also to be active physically as well as in cognitively speaking, so that we can be the best out of this work. So thanks so much for having me, Grant. I hopefully I answer all your questions.
Oh, you did. I mean, I'll give your hometown a shout out since I had the privilege of traveling to Spain with you.
Yes.
It makes me want to retire to Spain. Like, it was that nice kind of thing. So I'm surprised a little California for you, but yes, I am landlocked in Arkansas with great humidity and heat for that. But again, California is the closest to Spain. That's why I mentioned California. It's an easy jump off point.
Yeah.
Truly, thank you for your time. I know you're a busy man. If there's anything else that pops up you want to send a link out to, shoot it my way. We'll pass it on to the listeners. So with that, thank you everyone for listening in. Until next time, echoing what Alex talks about throughout, place matters. And get into a GIS class. Cheers.
Be sure to subscribe to CapIndex's YouTube page, @CapIndexCrimeRisk, and look for Geography of Crime on your favorite podcast platform. Thanks for tuning in, because when it comes to crime, place always matters.